Hello everybody, this is Ahmed Abdelmohsen, and today I'm giving a picture coach on how to give an engaging lecture. From the photo, the lecture seems really engaging. So because our students are a little sleepy today, let's talk for a while about watching movies. And I have a short story about this. 2 months ago, I was watching a movie and it was a really exciting movie. I was really thrilled. I was on the edge of my seat. However, in the middle of the movie, my child asked me, "Why did you see this movie again?" What? I watched this movie again. I can't remember even a single scene of it. And this made me ask myself, how I can forget an entire movie? I was really thrilled. It was really interesting. I was on the edge of my seat. What happens? How did my memory went completely blank? When we connect this to the lectures that we attended, especially when we were students in the medical school, I can remember that I attended a lot of interesting lectures. The speakers were really knowledgeable. The subject was really prepared. However, little of information I still remember today from these lectures. And this made me ask myself, what's the reason? Is that because we were just watching? However, we were engaged. We found the films, the lectures, the materials are really interesting. And the reason behind that is not just because we were watching. We might also act and forget what we did. In order to remember things, we have to think a lot about their meaning, what they mean to us. And this is called reflection. However, reflection alone is not enough. We should also participate in these acts. We shouldn't sit like passive receivers. So we have to think and we have to participate and share in the process at all. So let's work on the first part, on engaging our students' mind, on making them think deeply about what we say. But before I tell you how can we do this, let's break some barriers. You know, when you enter to the lecture theater, you have some barriers between you and your students. They might look at you as a knowledgeable man who carry a lot of information, and they have a little. There might also some language barriers. And in order to stimulate their minds, we should be very friendly to them. So let's break some of these barriers. And the first thing that you can do is to start a communication with them. Do you still remember my movie? It was a short story that I started my lecture with because I wanted to make a friendly relationship between us. Telling a story is a really interesting trick that you might use to engage your students. Another thing, try to bring a lot of illustrations. Make your lecture really interesting. You know, things that we see stay longer than things that we hear or things that we read. So try to bring a lot of illustrations, a lot of videos. Try to connect your students to the future that they seek to know more about. And now you have to change your attitude. Instead of keep pouring information inside their brains, please let them to share you in this process. You can't depend on them. Let's engage them with you in the learning process. A good example for this is changing your lecture from just an oral lecture to a case study. You can tell them a little of information about the case, about the history, and then let them to continue the process. My next advice to you today is to take a rest from talking. Don't keep talking all the time. You have to leave your mic for some minutes. You know, when you speak for longer than 18 minutes, a lot of information that you give don't stay long in your student's head. So you have to stop for 3 to 4 minutes, and this is called the pausing technique. Ask the students to make pairs and ask them to speak together about the parts that you gave and ask them to raise questions. This would help them to reflect on what you've said, and they would remember for a longer time. You can also transform your lecture from the oral form into a written form and hand out the rest part in a form of written information. Ask them to make groups of 3 to 4 students and try to study this part together, and then ask them to try to explain it to the rest of the lecture. And now it's about time to wake up our sleep students. You know, there were a lot of them at the start of the lecture. It's about time to wake them up. And my advice to do this is to fire a lot of questions. You know, asking questions will raise their alert, will engage them with you, will make them fear that they might be asked next, and make them target questions toward a specific student. When you leave it as a general question, only few would share with you. And you can also follow this by follow-up questions to the colleagues and ask them to share their reflection about their colleagues' answer. This would make a social environment, and this will raise their interaction with you and with their colleagues. And at the end, don't forget to make your students reflect on what you say in the lecture. Don't forget that the difference between passive teaching and active teaching is getting your students reflect on what you say, is treating them as adults, and to make them take part in their teaching and learning process. Finally, I hope you will all get engaged in this lecture and find it useful. Thank you.